Listen, the reality is about to be revealed. And the moment it hits, you're going to cut ties with them forever. The craziest thing is this: they are completely clueless that you're already aware. They assume their little snare is still active, just waiting for you to stumble right in, yet you completely bypassed it. You marched straight past it without consciously knowing you made that choice. And that one simple action just shattered their whole scheme. They constructed a setup. Yes, they crafted a setup. They plotted it out. And without putting in any effort, you ruined it. We need to dive deep into this because the energy I'm sensing here is literally giving me goosebumps. Now, I need you to focus on a specific individual in your circle today. A person who acts way too flawless, a bit too polished, totally giving off that "I'm incapable of doing wrong" vibe. You recognize the kind. The individual who constantly speaks perfectly, who the crowd views as incredibly kind, deeply compassionate, and flawlessly composed. Exactly that individual. I am feeling an intense connection to their energy today, and the message shining clearly is that every single thing they fabricated, their entire facade, their whole public standing is on the verge of total collapse, and you'll be watching right from the front row as it shatters. The difference is you'll be ahead of the game. You'll already be aware. You are going to hold the facts safely in your possession long before the rest of the crowd even gets a hint. This is the actual situation at play. This individual has been concealing a major secret from you. We aren't talking minor details. It's massive. A secret they've poured immense effort into keeping deeply hidden. A reality they assumed you would never, ever discover. And the sole reason they felt so confident is that they've been putting on a theatrical performance for you all along. When they look at you, they act affectionate. They appear giving. They ask how you're doing. They deliver the perfect lines. They create an illusion that you can rely on them unconditionally. However, beneath that mask, out of sight, when you aren't looking, a completely alternate identity is pulling the strings. An individual who has been deceiving you. Someone who might have actually stolen from you. It doesn't matter if it was finances, hours, your incredibly valuable time, your vital energy, open doors, or perhaps fractions of your own good name. And the craziest detail is that you sensed it. Deep within your core, you inherently knew something wasn't right, even if you were unable to exactly identify what it was. You recognize that sensation. I am certain you understand that vibe. It's like white noise playing faintly in your brain, a subtle buzzing you can't pinpoint. Perhaps you've stayed up late staring at the ceiling, analyzing past chats, wondering, hold on, why did that seem wrong? Perhaps you even felt remorseful for doubting their character simply because, at a glance, superficially, they appear to be an incredibly decent human. They're the friend everyone seeks out for guidance. They're the account always sharing quotes regarding compassion, dedication, and choosing the moral high ground. But here is the catch. That is precisely the red flag. Individuals who perpetually act out righteousness, who relentlessly broadcast and talk loudly about their own purity, typically, yes, frequently possess inner demons they're attempting to silence. It is just a costume. And currently, that disguise is beginning to peel away, regardless of whether they realize it. The vision I'm getting shows that this individual truly has no idea about their own identity. Not genuinely. They have invested countless hours calculating exactly how they should behave. What actions make the crowd adore them? What gestures win people's confidence? What secures them the applause, the entry, and the spotlight to the point that they've entirely disconnected from their authentic core? It is purely tactical. Yes, it is entirely a show. And the terrifying reality is they've become so skilled at this illusion that occasionally they trick themselves into believing their own charade. Yet, stripped of all that fake charm, there exists an individual who is profoundly, fundamentally egotistical. An individual who, when the absolute worst happens, genuinely only prioritizes their own well-being, their public standing, their personal luxury, their upcoming maneuver. And you were merely a pawn in their game, perhaps a functional pawn, perhaps a sentimental one, yet still a pawn, never a human being from their perspective. Now, this is exactly where the plot thickens, as this is the turning point of the whole dynamic. You took a specific action, and I doubt you even comprehended. That you initiated it. At a certain point in this journey, you distanced yourself. Perhaps you ceased opening up so freely. Perhaps you began catching those minor contradictions and merely filed them away silently. Perhaps you just ceased offering them the emotional response they were accustomed to extracting from you. And that minor adjustment, that was the catalyst that shattered their entire framework. Because their whole strategy relied heavily on, truly hinged on, you remaining entirely unchanged, gullible, accessible, and slightly oblivious. The exact second you silently began noticing their true colors, even just a fraction, the snare they constructed to hold you began imploding from within. They remain clueless about the shift. They assume they still hold the reins. They assume you remain the identical version of yourself from half a year back, 12 months back, or however extended this dynamic has been playing out, yet you've evolved. And that disconnect between what you believe, what they assume you understand, and what you genuinely comprehend, that void is on the verge of becoming the most crucial element of your journey in the upcoming days, because the reality is approaching. I am not saying perhaps, I am stating it is already unfolding. Secrets that remain buried are currently emerging. Discussions are taking place that this individual is entirely blind to. Mutual acquaintances are beginning to connect the dots, beginning to share observations, beginning to raise inquiries, subtle inquiries, remarks such as, listen, did their behavior feel weird to you as well? And once that ball drops, it refuses to halt. It resembles. It is exactly like yanking a single loose string on a garment that was only maintained by sheer friction. The entire structure begins disintegrating, and there is absolutely zero they can enact to pause it. Because the harder they fight to manipulate the narrative, the more blatantly clear it gets that a hidden narrative actually exists. And hear me out. I realize this could feel overwhelming, yet I truly sense the urgency to express it. Whatever actions this individual has committed, you are about to discover the complete magnitude of it. And it truly is. It is destined to exceed your expectations, not fall short, but exceed them. You could be preparing your mind for a specific scenario, and the facts will inevitably turn out. Grander than that. It could tie into finances. It could drag in an entirely different individual. A secret third party you were totally oblivious to being involved. It might reveal a toxic cycle. Exactly. Not merely a single isolated event. Signifying this is definitely not their initial time pulling a stunt like this on another human. And the moment you uncover it, This is exactly how your internal state will react. You will experience this rush, this wind knocked out of you sensation. And then, nearly instantaneously following that, a bizarre sense of liberation will wash over, resembling a trapped exhale ultimately getting released. Similar to a thick mist vanishing from your entire existence that you were completely unaware was blinding you. You will reflect on the previous several months, perhaps an even longer timeline, and abruptly, countless memories will align perfectly. Why your energy depleted in their presence, why specific scenarios perpetually manage to loop around to serve their interests. While whenever a positive milestone occurred for you, it inevitably, somehow, diminished in value or became manipulated to spotlight them instead. Here is the element that holds massive weight, however, and I need you to deeply absorb this truth. You will not aggressively face them. At minimum, not in the aggressive style you could be picturing in this moment, like a massive theatrical explosion. The reality of what will unfold is much more silent and, frankly, infinitely more empowering. You will merely turn your back and leave. You will possess the full data. You will understand the whole picture, and you will utilize those facts to quietly remove yourself, flawlessly, peacefully. Zero dramatic monologues, zero justifications, zero offering them the ego boost of an emotional outburst. And that sheer quietness that is guaranteed to intimidate them far worse than a screaming match ever would. Because individuals of this nature love to justify things. Individuals of this type, those who operate purely on acting and dominance, require your emotional feedback. They require the chaos. They crave the chaos, since chaos is the environment they flourish in, the place they can twist the narrative, act like the martyr, and paint their own image as the tragic hero. When you hand them absolutely zero, they possess zero fuel to manipulate, and they will undeniably detect it. Definitely. They will sense the energetic change even if they struggle to articulate it. They will contact you frequently. They will become strangely sweeter, practically trying too hard. And it occurs because a deep fraction of their soul detects a shift, regardless of whether their waking brain hasn't processed it currently. That is simply human psychology in action. I furthermore need to discuss the reason this targeted you in particular, since I truly refuse to believe it was accidental, and I reject the idea that it stems from a flaw within you. If anything is true, it is essentially the complete reverse. You possess a spirit that inherently offers others grace and assumes the best intentions. You are the type of soul who, whenever the energy feels wrong, attempts to discover an excuse that avoids, concluding that they are deceiving you outright, because your brain simply doesn't function on that frequency. You aren't programmed to execute that level of betrayal. Therefore, it becomes incredibly difficult for you to project that malice onto another human. That is absolutely not a vulnerability. Negative. Not at all. That is genuinely a profound level of honor. However, it does signify that individuals who maneuver the exact way this specific individual maneuvers can occasionally slip by your radar for extended periods compared to someone who is innately paranoid. The positive update is that this grace period is shutting rapidly, because currently your intuition is highly heightening. You are beginning to catch red flags you previously ignored. And the second you witness it, genuinely observe it, erasing it from your mind becomes impossible. That is exactly your current position. Even if you currently remain in that something in that something seems wrong, yet I lack the evidence phase. You are nearer, much closer to the entire revelation than your brain comprehends. Let us now discuss the aftermath. Since this narrative goes far beyond a deceptive person being unmasked. This is a journey regarding the doors that unlock for you the second they are removed from your reality. And I genuinely sense this is the chapter that individuals gloss over way too quickly. Therefore, I wish to pause and emphasize this. The moment this individual forfeits their access to your world, when that energetic tie ultimately completely severs, it will not create an empty void. It will honestly resemble a heavy burden being lifted, as if you were entirely unaware of the massive effort you were draining merely dealing with their drama, dealing with the dynamic, filtering your personal responses, filtering the words you spoke or withheld in their company. Every ounce of that hijacked vitality returns straight to your spirit. And the actions individuals take using that restored vitality are typically absolutely incredible. Fresh pathways usually manifest practically instantly, feeling remarkably quick. A career opening, an artistic venture, a human being who has remained silently in your periphery, who abruptly initiates contact in a manner that feels entirely distinct compared to whatever this former individual ever brought to the table. If this specific individual happened to be a partner you were intimately tied to, I strongly sense that the next arrival is going to represent a complete paradigm shift. Like you will ultimately comprehend how a relationship should operate when a partner genuinely supports your growth rather than merely claiming they do. If this leans towards a professional or corporate dynamic, I envision an identical outcome. A colleague entering that space who genuinely advocates for you, who never requires you to play small just so their ego feels massive. And here is a concept I believe is truly valuable to ponder. This individual, the one executing this entire scheme, they genuinely lack self-awareness. Seriously. Down to their very core foundation. They've dedicated so much time regulating their public perception that their actual soul beneath the surface has essentially withered away. Yes, and the moment their facade begins fracturing, the moment society spots the disconnect between their fake persona and their authentic actions, it will devastate them far worse than you might assume, since their entire identity rests solely upon that illusion. Having it shattered isn't merely a humiliation for their ego. It is earth-shattering on a profoundly severe level. You could potentially experience a brief moment of pity. Indeed, compassion when the fallout strikes. And that is perfectly fine. Yes, feeling that doesn't imply you are indebted to them. It certainly doesn't suggest you need to initiate contact. It absolutely doesn't imply that a single piece of this mess is your duty to repair. It is simply your genuine nature shining through. A soul who experiences empathy even toward those who utterly failed to earn that kindness. However, observe that emotion, validate it, and then release it completely. Just let it drift away, because their downfall is not your burden to. Shoulder. It was inevitably bound to occur. Yes, you simply turned out to be the soul who recognized it earliest. A final detail I need to highlight because it repeatedly surfaced while I was tuning into this energy. I get an overwhelming feeling that the wider circle will begin viewing this individual in a new light as well, practically simultaneously with your awakening. The synchronicity of these events is absolutely not accidental. It feels as if several forces are aligning perfectly. Your personal awakening, the epiphanies of bystanders, perhaps even a distinct outside incident, such as a a workplace issue, or perhaps a significantly graver matter being exposed during this exact time frame. Therefore, this will definitely not manifest as a sluggish, prolonged ordeal where you remain the sole awakened one while society continues praising them. It will manifest more akin to a collective change occurring instantaneously. The specific mask of this individual that the public trusted simply ceases to be convincing. And you are going to be observing from the sidelines, pondering, hold on, I was already aware of this. Because you truly were. You caught on long before the rest of the world. You simply lacked the concrete evidence back then. And presently, you are on the verge of receiving it. I furthermore wish to softly advise you on this because I believe it holds weight. Avoid the temptation to loudly declare, I warned you. It is not a productive statement. Even if, believe me, the temptation to say it will feel overpowering. Allow the crowd to arrive at that conclusion independently, not because the guilty party warrants shielding. Exactly. However, simply because your energy will resonate as infinitely more dominant if you remain completely peaceful, rooted, and completely over the drama. The crowd is bound to feel stunned, distressed, and perhaps slightly ashamed that they remained blind for so long. And the energy you radiate during that fallout, stable, unfazed, already miles ahead, that will speak volumes more regarding your true character than any lengthy justification possibly could. You are absolutely not. You are not the individual required to justify your actions in this scenario. That was never your role. They were consistently the guilty party concealing a dark truth. You were simply existing in your own reality, a wonderful reality. So, this is exactly where I wish to conclude this message. The reality. The reality is approaching, and it is arriving regardless of whether the crowd is prepared to witness it. What has already transpired without you applying any effort, without you plotting, strategizing, or battling a single soul, is that you successfully removed yourself from the alignment they required you to occupy. The snare relied heavily on you remaining blind, remaining accessible, remaining precisely in the spot they dragged or placed you. Yet you refused to comply. Perhaps it wasn't even a calculated decision on your part. Yet an inner force within your spirit initiated guarding your energy before your logical brain processed it. And that defensive pivot is the exact catalyst that is already shattering the entire illusion. You are not stepping into the revelation. The revelation is actively surrounding you, and it will manifest much quicker than you anticipate. The moment it drops, when it finally drops, you will experience that stomach plummeting sensation, followed nearly instantly by a phenomenal sense of weightlessness. As if you are finally able to exhale a gasp of air you have been suppressing for far too extended of a period, and waiting just beyond that final exhale lies a chapter of your existence that feels freer, transparent, and vastly more authentic, surrounded by souls who genuinely earned their spot beside you. If any portion of this message aligns with your spirit, I would absolutely love to know which specific segment resonated the deepest. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below, since, truthfully, the feedback on these intuitive updates is always mind-blowing, and I adore witnessing how this guidance impacts various souls. And if this is your first time on my page, definitely hit that follow button, because believe me, you absolutely refuse to miss the messages pouring in next. This energetic wave is nowhere near finished revealing itself, not by a long shot.